In the grand dining hall of the Whitmore mansion, the morning sunlight streamed through the Victorian-style windows, reflecting off crystal wine glasses filled with white wine and the gleaming silver cutlery. Everything was perfect, from the meticulously arranged dining table to the lavish dishes, until James Whitmore, the master of the house and one of the most powerful men in London, casually dropped a statement that froze the atmosphere. "Tonight, you will be engaged to Arthur Sterling." Lucy Whitmore, the only daughter of James, set down her knife with a sharp clatter that echoed in the quiet room. She looked up at her father, her sharp eyes filled with disbelief. "What did you just say?" James calmly folded his financial newspaper, his expression unwavering. "Tonight is your engagement party with Arthur Sterling." Lucy let out a cold laugh, tinged with mockery. "You want me to marry Arthur? That guy? A useless playboy without an ounce of capability? Are you sure this is a merger and not a disguised form of human trafficking?" James remained unfazed by his daughter's defiance. He looked at her with the gaze of a man who had made up his mind and would not change it. "Arthur has status, lineage. He doesn't need to be competent. You just need to be a good wife and help our family maintain its position." Lucy raised an eyebrow, folding her arms across her chest in defiance. "And what about me? My opinion doesn't matter." James sighed, his voice steady but filled with authority. "Do you really think you have a choice?" Her hands clenched into fists on her lap before she slowly stood up. The shock in her eyes had disappeared, replaced by a cold determination. "Then let me make it clear one more time. First will, not marry." Helen, her mother, who had been silently observing the tense exchange, finally spoke, her voice laced with concern. "Lucy, you shouldn't challenge your father like this." But Lucy didn't care. She met James's gaze without blinking. She knew exactly what kind of man he was. Someone who controlled everything, from finances to politics, even the personal relationships within their family. But this time, she would not let him dictate her life. James regarded his daughter, a flicker of irritation passing through his eyes. Then he smirked, as if waiting to see what she would do. "Do you think you can escape this?" Lucy smiled, a knowing, daring smile. "You'll be surprised." That evening, the Ritz London glowed under dazzling lights. Elegant evening gowns, impeccably tailored suits, and the clinking of champagne glasses filled the grand ballroom, where the elite had gathered to witness an important event: the arranged marriage between Lucy Whitmore and Arthur Sterling, a union that would officially merge two of London's most powerful families. But the bride was nowhere to be found, because she was preparing for a perfect escape. Inside a suite on the fourth floor of the hotel, Lucy stood before the mirror, gazing at her reflection in the crimson evening gown. Flawless, noble, a golden canary trapped in a cage. She would not let anyone decide her fate but herself. Swiftly, she changed her attire. The evening gown was discarded, replaced with a form-fitting black outfit, light and flexible. The high heels were kicked aside in favor of soft boots that allowed silent movement. Since childhood, she had been trained to be a perfect lady: horseback riding, fencing, shooting, dancing, martial arts. But Lucy hadn't learned these skills to please her father. She had learned them to be strong, to ensure that no one could control her. She checked her bag: small folding knife, lock-picking tools, lightweight rope. Ready. Opening the window, she looked down. 4 floors, a marble pillar, one chance to escape. She took a deep breath, and then she jumped. A sleek black Bentley idled in front of the hotel, its engine quietly running. Inside the car, Adam Sterling, CEO of Sterling Enterprises, leaned back in his seat, a glass of wine in hand, his sharp gaze observing the party from afar. He had little interest in his younger brother's wedding. Whoever Arthur married was irrelevant. He was merely here out of obligation. But then, he saw a figure leap from the 4th floor window. Lowering his glass, Adam's eyes gleamed with intrigue. The person dressed in black moved swiftly, landing with the precision of a trained fighter. Not a clumsy fool, not an amateur, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. An assassin, an intruder, or someone on the run. Then, the street light illuminated the figure's face. Adam froze. Lucy Whitmore, the bride of the engagement party. Adam slowly leaned back into his seat, a smirk forming on his lips. A high society lady escaping an arranged marriage? This just got a lot more interesting than he had anticipated. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. Find out where Lucy Whitmore is going. His voice was low, steady, laced with unmistakable amusement. I want to know what she plans to do next. Lucy thought she had escaped, but she didn't know that a pair of keen eyes had seen everything. And that man, Adam Sterling, was about to step into the game. Welcome to today's story. How did you feel about the journey you just followed? Share your thoughts with us. We hope that each story brings you moments of meaning and warmth. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and become a part of the Soul Stories family, where we tell stories that touch the heart and emotions. Our stories don't always reflect real life, but they are crafted with dedication to bring you inspiring and engaging moments. Stay tuned and continue this journey with us. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, don't hesitate to leave a comment. We value and appreciate every word you share. Wishing you joy and good fortune always. Chapter 1. The plan to become the CEO's bodyguard. After her daring escape from the Ritz Hotel, Lucy knew she couldn't wander aimlessly. Her father, James Whitmore, would undoubtedly mobilize all his resources to track her down and force her back. She needed a safe haven, not just any temporary shelter, but a place where her family's influence couldn't reach so easily. More importantly, she needed a shield, someone powerful enough to counter any tricks they might use against her. She had done her research before coming here. Adam Sterling wasn't just the CEO of Sterling Enterprises. He was also the older brother of Arthur, the man her father had tried to force upon her. But what set Adam apart was his cold, pragmatic nature and his absolute disdain for interference, even from his own family. If there was anyone who could protect her from the Whitmore family's grasp, it was him. Lucy Whitmore wasn't just an heiress, she was a warrior. Since childhood, she had been trained in martial arts by elite instructors, not to become a refined lady, but to defend herself in a world filled with people eager to exploit her family's power. While other debutantes were learning ballet, she was practicing boxing. While they perfected their etiquette, she mastered hand-to-hand combat, marksmanship, and tactical defense. So when she decided to escape her family, she knew she needed the perfect cover. And what better disguise than becoming a bodyguard? But she couldn't walk up to Adam Sterling as Lucy Whitmore. She needed a new identity, becoming a true bodyguard. Long hair, cut, flawless, fair skin, darkened, graceful demeanor, replaced with the sharp, commanding presence of a warrior. Lucy became Amos Reed, a battle-hardened bodyguard from Europe, a former private mercenary with a flawless record of completed missions. She forged an impeccable resume, complete with martial arts certifications, special forces training, and expert marksmanship. Of course, the skills weren't fabricated. She really was that good. The only question was, would Adam believe her? Lucy, now Amos, stood at the entrance of Sterling Enterprises, hands tucked casually into her pockets as she observed the steady flow of employees moving in and out of the building. When she saw Adam Sterling emerge, she immediately stepped into his path. "Do you need a bodyguard?" She spoke firmly, lowering her voice slightly to maintain her disguise. Adam halted, his sharp gaze scanning her like a predator assessing its prey. "What did you just say?" His voice was deep, cold, commanding. Lucy met his gaze without flinching. "I have a level 1 black belt in karate." She deliberately simplified her qualifications, just to provoke a reaction. Adam raised an eyebrow, unbothered by masking his contempt. "Level 1? You think that qualifies you to protect someone?" Lucy shrugged. "Not just karate, I'm also skilled in taekwondo, judo, and firearms." Adam crossed his arms, scrutinizing her. "Then why don't you prove it? Try taking me down. Right here, right now." Lucy smiled. A challenge she was more than willing to accept. "Just don't be embarrassed if I beat you in front of all these people." And before he could react, she attacked. Unlike those who boasted about their combat skills, Lucy acted. She moved like lightning, sidestepping to the right and aiming a precise strike at Adam's shoulder. But he was quick, dodging just in time and countering with a forceful block. Not bad, but not enough. She pivoted, using her leg as an anchor, and swept low with a powerful kick. This time, Adam wasn't fast enough to avoid it completely. He was forced to step back twice to regain his balance. Gas rippled through the crowd. Even the security guard stood frozen in shock. Adam licked his lips, amusement flickering in his eyes. Not bad. He adjusted his cufflinks. But Lucy wasn't done. She launched a high kick, aiming straight for his face. Adam leaned back, dodging it by mere inches. But just as he prepared to retaliate, Lucy spun around and locked her arm around his neck from behind. A perfect chokehold, one that could knock someone unconscious within 5 seconds if applied correctly. Her voice dropped to a whisper against his ear. If I tighten just a little more, you'll be out cold in 3 seconds. Want to test it? Adam smirked, his sharp eyes showing no fear. Impressive, he murmured, a hint of amusement lacing his deep voice. The surrounding security team was stunned. Lucy smoothly released him, stepping back with a steady, defiant gaze. Adam adjusted his suit, looking her over from head to toe. So, you really do have skills. Lucy arched an eyebrow. Did you think I was bluffing? Adam didn't reply immediately. He simply crossed his arms, contemplating. Then he turned to his assistant. Where's his file? The assistant quickly pulled out a document. Everything checks out. Amos Reed, former private mercenary, specialized in protecting high-profile individuals in Europe. Adam nodded slowly before turning back to her. Fine. His voice was deep, final. You're hired. Lucy could hardly believe it. Her plan had worked far more smoothly than expected. More importantly, she had defeated London's coldest CEO in his own test. But as she turned to leave, she failed to notice Adam's gaze lingering on her. A gaze filled with intrigue, suspicion, because there was one thing Adam was certain of. This man wasn't just any bodyguard. Chapter 2. When the cold CEO meets a suspicious bodyguard. Being a bodyguard seemed like an easy job, until Lucy quickly realized that Adam Sterling was not an easy boss to deal with. After just 3 days on the job, she had already gathered 3 crucial facts about him. 1. Adam was incredibly demanding. Every morning before anything else, Lucy was given a ridiculous task, making coffee. Make coffee, Adam ordered, without even looking at her. I'm a bodyguard, not a barista, Lucy protested. My bodyguard does whatever I ask, he replied nonchalantly. Lucy rolled her eyes and stomped off to the kitchen, grappling with the overly complicated coffee machine. She could barely make instant noodles. Why on earth would she know how to brew high-class coffee like the rich? After a frustrating battle with the machine, she finally placed a cup of coffee on Adam's desk. He took a sip and immediately frowned. What is this? Lucy feigned innocence. Coffee, just as you asked. Adam set the cup down, his face unreadable. How did you even manage to make coffee that tastes like boiled noodle water? Lucy's stomach flipped. Well, she might have accidentally confused the kettle water with the leftover instant noodle broth. It's healthy, she said, completely deadpan. Adam slid the cup aside without another word. I'm deducting your pay. What? 2. Adam was cold to everyone except one. Lucy had never met someone as emotionally detached as Adam. He barely smiled, barely acknowledged people, and always kept his distance. Except for one exception. One afternoon when they returned to Adam's private estate, Lucy discovered something shocking. He had a dog. Not just any dog, a massive Alaskan Malamute, pure white, with bright eyes that gleamed with excitement as it charged toward Adam. Axel, no! But before Adam could react, the giant dog leaped onto him, knocking him back. And then it happened. Adam laughed, not just a slight smirk, but a real, genuine laugh. Lucy was stunned. I just witnessed a historic moment, she mumbled. Adam shot her a side glance but said nothing, continuing to scratch the dog's fur. Lucy folded her arms, nodding in understanding. So you don't smile at people, but you smile at a dog. Adam ignored her, but his gaze darkened slightly. "If you keep talking, I'll deduct your pay." Lucy smirked. "Should I start barking instead? Maybe then you'll like me more?" Adam gave her a warning look. "Don't even try." 3. Adam was a little too suspicious. From the very beginning, Adam felt something was off about Amos Reed. The guy was too skilled for a regular bodyguard. His hand-to-hand combat was lightning fast, his reflexes sharper than most professional assassins, and his aim was impeccable. But what made Adam most suspicious was Amos really a man? Normally, he wouldn't care. But there were a few things about Amos that didn't add up. His voice was deep, but sometimes it pitched slightly higher when he was flustered. His build was oddly light for his apparent strength. Occasionally, his movements, reactions, and even his subtle moments of hesitation made Adam wonder. One evening, Adam sat in his office watching Amos check a firearm. "You used to be a private mercenary." Amos didn't look up, still inspecting the bullets. "Yeah." "Which unit?" Amos paused for a split second. "The Special Covert Forces?" Adam raised an eyebrow. "That's a very creative name." Lucy barely held in her laughter, but internally, she was sweating. If she wasn't careful, she'd be exposed. The emotionless CEO and the first time he laughed at a human. One day, Lucy was tasked with delivering a mountain of documents to Adam's office. There was only one problem. The stack was taller than her head. She wobbled into his office, barely keeping balance. Adam stood there, arms crossed, his usual cold, unreadable gaze fixed on her. She stumbled, nearly tripping over the edge of the desk. She blinked at him, expecting help. Instead, he raised an eyebrow and said coolly, "If you drop them, I'm deducting your pay." Lucy froze, gripping the documents as if her life depended on it. "Do you even know what human decency is?" she muttered. And then, the impossible happened. Adam chuckled, not just a small smirk, but a real, undeniable laugh. Lucy's brain short-circuited. "I made you laugh!" she exclaimed, as if she had discovered a groundbreaking scientific phenomenon. Adam realized his mistake and immediately cleared his throat, his face returning to its usual stoic expression, but it was too late. "Unbelievable! You actually know how to laugh?" Lucy pointed at him like she had just caught an alien. "Shut up!" Adam scowled, but the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Oh my God, I need to mark this day on my calendar. If you say one more word, I'm deducting your entire month's salary." Lucy bit her tongue, but inside she was screaming in triumph. Adam Sterling didn't trust easily. Yet somehow Lucy, the mysterious, skilled, gun-wielding bodyguard with an undeniable secret, had caught his attention. And that was the most dangerous part. Because if Adam truly started paying attention to her, he wouldn't stop until he uncovered the entire truth. And Lucy wasn't sure how much longer she could keep her secret. Chapter 3. Feelings begin to grow. But there's a secret. Though he would never admit it, Adam was increasingly drawn to this small, irritating bodyguard who challenged him every day. At first, he simply found Amos Reed intriguing, a skilled fighter with a rebellious streak and a defiant attitude. Unlike others, Amos wasn't afraid of him, nor did he try to win his favor. His sharp comebacks often made Adam chuckle internally, though he never let it show. But then, small things started to change his perspective. That day, a torrential downpour drenched the city. Lucy, or rather Amos, stood guard outside Adam's estate, unwavering in her duty. But the moment Adam stepped out of his car, he immediately noticed something off. She was shivering. Unlike the other male bodyguards, she was noticeably slimmer, her frame more delicate. She always carried herself with a sense of control, as if nothing could shake her. But today, that strength seemed fragile. Adam frowned and walked up to her. The moment he got closer, he saw her pale complexion and the feverish glaze in her eyes. "Are you insane? Why are you standing out here instead of going inside?" His voice was sharp, but even he wasn't sure why he cared so much. Lucy's voice was hoarse, her throat dry. "I'm a bodyguard. I have a job to do." Adam was silent for a second. Then, without warning, he reached out and placed his hand against her forehead. Lucy instinctively flinched back, but it was too late. Adam had already noticed her fever. "You're burning up," he muttered, pulling a packet of cold medicine from his coat pocket and shoving it into her hand. "Take it. If you die, who's going to annoy me every day?" Lucy blinked in shock. "Wait, are you actually worried about me?" Adam immediately turned away, his face unreadable, though his stiff posture betrayed him. "Absolutely not," he muttered, but the way his hands clenched into his pockets told a different story. Lucy let out a weak chuckle, even though her throat ached. "That's the strangest way anyone's ever shown concern for me." Adam didn't reply. His expression had already returned to normal, but something had shifted. Once Adam paid attention to someone, he never let them go easily. In the following days, Adam began to realize something. Amos wasn't just a bodyguard, he was everywhere. Not intrusive, not bothersome, but always there. At first, Adam told himself it was just part of the job, but then he started getting annoyed whenever someone else paid too much attention to Amos, especially at public events. One evening at an exclusive high society gala, Adam noticed something unsettling. A young businessman was hovering around Amos, far too interested. The man's hand brushed lightly over Lucy's shoulder. "Sterling's bodyguard?" He smirked, his tone laced with ulterior motives. "You seem interesting. Ever thought about working for me instead?" Lucy sighed, keeping her voice indifferent. "I don't switch employers." The man chuckled, studying her. "Are you sure? I can double your pay." Lucy's patience wore thin. She tilted her head, her eyes turning sharper. "You're making a mistake." "I enjoy making mistakes," he murmured, raising his glass as if to continue the conversation. But before he could move, a firm hand gripped Lucy's shoulder and pulled her back. A low, commanding voice rumbled behind her. "He's not for sale." Lucy looked up and immediately recognized the cold, piercing gaze of Adam. His expression was glacial. No amusement, no patience, just a quiet, simmering danger. The businessman hesitated. He hadn't expected a reaction from Adam Sterling himself. "Pity," the man said, though his voice was edged with subtle mockery. "But you can't keep him forever." Adam said nothing. He simply stared. His eyes were sharp, unforgiving. It took only a few seconds for the businessman to mutter an awkward excuse and slip away. Lucy pulled back slightly, turning to Adam with a teasing smirk. "Were you afraid of losing me?" Adam immediately let go, though his movements were slightly stiff. He cleared his throat, adjusting his tie as if it was the most important thing in the world. "You overthink things." Lucy chuckled, but deep inside a strange feeling stirred in her chest. If Adam truly cared about her, what did that mean? Everything seemed to be unfolding naturally, but Lucy knew she couldn't let Adam get too close. She was not really a bodyguard. She was not Amos Reed. She was Lucy Whitmore, the runaway fiancée of Arthur Sterling, the very woman Adam's family was relentlessly searching for. If Adam discovered her true identity, he could hand her back to Arthur, or worse, he could become the very obstacle preventing her from escaping again. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the possibility of him betraying her. It was the fact that she was starting to feel safe around him, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. Chapter 4. Identity Exposed. The CEO discovers the shocking truth. Everything had been going smoothly, or so Lucy thought, until that fateful night when she unknowingly tore down the veil concealing her identity. After an extravagant gala that had lasted far longer than expected, all she wanted was to retreat to her room, take a long, hot shower, and collapse into bed. She had spent the entire evening standing close to Adam, maintaining the facade of a loyal and competent bodyguard, all the while suppressing the overwhelming urge to shed the constricting vest and dress shirt she had been forced to wear to keep up her disguise. The moment she stepped into her private room at the estate, she let out a sigh of relief. She carelessly tossed her vest onto a chair, yanked the tie from her neck, and began unbuttoning her shirt, revealing the smooth silk slip dress underneath, her emergency backup outfit in case she ever needed to make a quick escape. But she had been too hasty. The door swung open without warning. She had forgotten to lock it, and standing right there at the threshold was the one person she never wanted to discover her secret. Adam Sterling. His sharp gaze locked onto her like a laser, scanning every detail in mere seconds. The air in the room froze. Lucy stood still, her hands gripping the edges of her shirt, her wide eyes betraying the realization that she had just exposed herself in the worst way possible. The silence was deafening. Adam didn't speak immediately. Instead, his gaze slowly traveled downward, taking in the unmistakable curve of her silhouette beneath the unbuttoned shirt. A subtle crease formed between his brows. But instead of shock or anger, his expression revealed something else entirely: satisfaction. It was as if he had just confirmed a long-held suspicion. "You're a woman?" His deep voice cut through the air, steady and deliberate. Lucy's heart pounded violently. She felt a cold sweat break out as she frantically pulled her shirt closed, as if she could somehow undo what had already been seen. Desperately trying to regain control, she blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "You're mistaken." Adam didn't move. His eyes didn't waver. "I'm not blind," he said slowly, his voice carrying an unshakable certainty. Lucy felt cornered, trapped with no way out. Denial was useless. She had always been fearless, but as she stood under Adam's piercing gaze, she realized she had never felt so vulnerable. Then Adam took a step forward and quietly shut the door behind him. A subconscious retreat. Lucy instinctively took a step back. Not because she feared him, but because she knew he now held the upper hand. "So that's how it is." He clasped his hands behind his back, his eyes gleaming with something new. Amusement. Lucy couldn't keep up. She had braced herself for anger, for accusations, for immediate retaliation. But instead, Adam laughed, a soft, knowing chuckle. Lucy felt her entire brain short-circuit. "What the hell?" Adam tilted his head, his blue eyes glinting with intrigue. "No wonder I've been so drawn to you." Lucy froze. 1 second, 2 seconds. Her mind lagged behind, and then her entire body went rigid. "Wait, what did you just say?" Adam took another step closer, his gaze locked onto hers. "I like you." He shrugged, his voice maddeningly calm and matter-of-fact. "Whether you're Amos or Lucy, that doesn't change." Lucy forgot how to breathe. "Wait, what?" She had prepared for 1,000 different outcomes. But this was nowhere in her carefully planned scenarios. She had expected anger. She had expected him to call for security, to drag her back to Arthur, or even to confront her about her deception. But instead, he wasn't mad. He wasn't even surprised. He looked at her with a quiet, knowing patience, like he had already figured this out long ago. Lucy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Denying it was useless. She had already been completely exposed. Adam took another step, now standing directly in front of her. His deep voice was slow, deliberate, almost savoring the moment. "Now then," his gaze bore into hers, unwavering. "Care to explain yourself, Miss Lucy Whitmore?" Lucy felt the air leave her lungs. He didn't just know she was a woman. He knew exactly who she was. And now, she had no way out. A storm of questions flooded her mind. How long had he known? Why hadn't he exposed her earlier? What was he planning to do now? But most terrifying of all, what did he truly want from her? Lucy held her breath and waited. Chapter 5. The Truth Unveiled. The Bodyguard's Confession. Lucy stood frozen, every nerve in her body on edge as Adam's piercing gaze locked onto her. He knew. He didn't just know she was a woman. He knew her real name. There was no more denying it, no more room to escape. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to steady the turmoil within. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice lower than usual, devoid of her usual playfulness and sarcasm. Adam crossed his arms, leaning casually against the desk, his eyes never leaving hers. "Since the first test." Lucy's body tensed. "The moment you took me down with that flawless maneuver, I started to suspect," Adam said calmly, his voice steady but razor sharp. "Not because you were skilled. I fought people far better than you. But what caught my attention was how you fought. There was no hesitation. Unlike most bodyguards trained to protect their clients, You fought like someone who refused to lose." He paused, letting his words sink in. Lucy clenched her fists, a chill running down her spine. "And after that," Adam continued, "I noticed you didn't behave like a professional bodyguard. You never walked in formation, never followed the standard protection protocols. You always positioned yourself in the safest possible spot, not according to a bodyguard's instincts, but according to someone who was used to running." Lucy swallowed hard but said nothing. She hadn't realized she had been careless from the very beginning. Adam tilted his head slightly, his lips curving into a knowing smirk. "But what convinced me the most?" His sharp blue eyes bore into her, as if peeling away every last one of her defenses. "You don't act like a man at all." Her breath caught in her throat, but Adam merely let out a quiet chuckle. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The way you walk, the subtle softness in your voice, no matter how hard you try to lower it, the way you drink tea. No man holds a teacup with 3 fingers like that." He shook his head slightly, amusement flickering in his gaze. "But I was curious to see how long you thought you could keep up the act." There was no escaping this. Lucy loosened her grip, knowing she had already lost. Slowly, she lifted her chin, locking eyes with Adam, her resolve firm. "Fine, I admit it." Her voice was steady, unwavering. "I'm not Amos Reed, I'm Lucy Whitmore." Adam didn't look surprised. It was as if he had already accepted that fact long ago. He simply nodded, waiting for her to continue. Lucy inhaled deeply, willing herself to remain composed. "I ran away from an arranged marriage with Arthur Sterling. If I hadn't, I would have been reduced to nothing more than a bargaining chip in my father's business dealings. I refused to let that happen. I refused to be married off to a man I don't love, just so my father could gain more power." She stopped for a moment, watching Adam's reaction, but his expression remained unreadable, as if he were simply listening to an ordinary story. "I had no other choice at the time. I knew I had to disappear, but if I ran as a helpless heiress, I'd be caught immediately. So I disguised myself as a bodyguard and found the safest place to hide. When I heard that you and Arthur weren't on good terms, I knew this was my only chance." Lucy let out a soft, self-deprecating chuckle. "Didn't think I'd get exposed this quickly, though." Silence hung between them, thick and heavy. Lucy didn't know how Adam would react after hearing the truth. He could hand her over to the Sterling family. He could force her to leave. Or worse, he could use her as a pawn in his own power plays. But he did none of those things. Instead, Adam took a step closer. Instinctively, Lucy backed away, only to find herself trapped against the wall. He leaned in slightly, just enough for her to feel the weight of his presence. His deep voice sent a shiver down her spine. "You actually thought I'd hand you over to Arthur?" Lucy held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. Adam studied her for a moment longer before a slow, knowing smirk curved his lips. "You really underestimate me." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Straightening up, he folded his arms, a spark of mischief flashing in his gaze. "I already didn't like Arthur before. Now I have even more reason not to give you back to him." He paused, his next words deliberate, each syllable slow and precise. "You belong to me now." Lucy felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "What?" Before she could react, Adam turned away as if he had already secured the victory in this conversation. "Now then, we have 2 options." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay calm. "And what would those be?" "1, you can leave, keep running, and risk getting caught at any moment." He glanced at her, eyes unreadable. "Or 2, you can stay here, but this time," his smirk deepened, "you stay as yourself." Lucy stood there, completely thrown off balance. No more Amos Reed, no more disguise. She would have to stay as Lucy Whitmore, under Adam Sterling's protection. A cold chill ran down her spine. She had escaped an arranged marriage, only to land herself in an even more dangerous situation. Adam wasn't Arthur, but he wasn't someone she could control either. She looked at him intently, trying to figure out if this was a trap or a genuine offer. But his expression remained calm, unwavering, as if he had already made the decision for both of them. Lucy wasn't sure if she had just escaped one danger or walk straight into another. Chapter 6. The Hero Saves the Damsel. Ever since Adam had discovered her true identity, Lucy knew things would never be as easy as before. She could no longer stay hidden, especially when Adam showed no intention of letting her go. But even in her worst-case scenarios, she had never expected Arthur Sterling, her despicable fiancé, to make the first move. Arthur, Adam's half-brother, had grown up surrounded by luxury, believing that everything he wanted belonged to him. When he found out that Lucy had been hiding under Adam's protection, disguised as his bodyguard, it wasn't just an insult to his pride, it was an outright humiliation. A woman whom his family had already chosen for him had not only run away, but had also sought refuge with his older brother. The jealousy and wounded ego clouded Arthur's already fragile sense of reason. He couldn't let Lucy remain by Adam's side for another second, and so he chose to take her by force. Lucy awoke to a pounding headache. Her wrists were bound tightly with leather straps, fastening her to a solid wooden chair. The dimly lit room was filled with the sickly scent of cigarettes, liquor, and arrogance. A crystal chandelier flickered overhead, casting eerie golden shadows over the thick velvet curtains that blocked out the windows. She hated this feeling, the feeling of being tied down, of having control stolen from her. She had vowed never to become prey, yet here she was, captured by the man she despised most. Everything had happened too fast. That night she had left Adam's office later than usual. She had been cautious, scanning her surroundings as she entered the underground parking lot of Adam's estate. She had assumed no one would dare touch her, but the moment she stepped forward, a black van sped toward her from behind. Instinct kicked in instantly. She spun around, reaching for her gun, but before she could draw it, a dark figure lunged at her from the shadows, pressing a cloth over her mouth. Chloroform. She had kicked hard enough to send one attacker crashing to the ground, but there were 3, 4 more. She took out another, but before she could regain her footing, a sharp prick stabbed into her neck. A sedative. Her vision blurred, her limbs went numb. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was a smirking silhouette leaning close, a voice thick with amusement whispering in her ear. "Hello, my runaway bride." Arthur. And now here he was, seated across from her, leisurely pouring himself a glass of wine, his lips curling into a smug, self-satisfied smirk. "Awake already?" he drawled, taking a sip, his predatory gaze roaming over her. "Did you really think you could escape me, Lucy?" She clenched her jaw, fighting off the lingering effects of the drug. She had bested stronger, smarter men than Arthur, but this time she had been caught off guard. She had been careless. "I didn't just think it," she snapped, eyes burning with defiance. "I knew I could." Her voice was steel, her glare pure venom. "You're pathetic, Arthur." Arthur chuckled darkly before leaning in, gripping her chin hard enough to bruise. "Still so feisty," he murmured, his breath reeking of alcohol as it ghosted over her skin. "You really thought you could run off and hide under Adam's wing? You think he actually cares about you? You're nothing more than his newest amusement." Lucy glared, but the fury inside her boiled over. Arthur loved to control, to break those beneath him, to make them beg. But he had chosen the wrong woman. Her fingers twitched, but the bonds were too tight. She needed an opening, a distraction, a second. Arthur's voice dropped lower, dripping with veiled threat. "One way or another, you'll be mine. You can submit willingly, or I'll make sure you have no other choice." Lucy's skin crawled with disgust, but before she could retort, a deafening crash erupted from outside the door. The door burst open with a deafening crash, sending splinters flying as the panicked shouts of guards echoed through the room. Arthur flinched, his fingers tightening around his glass of wine, while Lucy's heart pounded in her chest. She barely had time to react before the one man she trusted stepped inside. Adam Sterling. He was always composed, always calculating, always in control. But tonight, his presence carried a lethal, bone-chilling intensity. The moment Lucy's calls had gone unanswered, Adam had felt something was wrong. At first he remained calm, reminding himself that she was skilled, capable, and not easily caught off guard. But when the phone rang the third, then the fourth time, and still there was no response, unease turned into simmering fury. No one had the right to touch her. Within minutes, he had his security team tracking the surveillance cameras, quickly spotting an unmarked black van leaving the estate just before her disappearance. Cold rage seeped into his veins as he ordered them to trace the plates, find its last known location. It took less than 30 minutes to get an answer. The van had left the city, heading toward a secluded mansion on the outskirts. Adam didn't need to hear more. He already knew who was responsible. Arthur. That bastard had dared to take her. But Adam didn't explode in anger. His fury was cold, lethal, and merciless. He wasted no time. He didn't call the police. He didn't wait. He got in his car, and the moment he arrived, anyone who stood in his way paid the price. The first guard barely had time to react before Adam's fist collided with his jaw, sending him crashing into a glass table. The second one reached for his gun, but Adam was faster, twisting his wrist until the weapon clattered to the ground. A knee to the stomach sent the man crumpling in agony. Within 2 minutes, the entire security team lay motionless, groaning in pain or unconscious. Adam's gaze locked onto Arthur, standing by the bar, eyes flickering between anger and panic. "What the hell are you doing here?" Arthur snapped, but the slight waver in his voice betrayed his fear. Adam didn't answer immediately. His eyes swept over Lucy, quickly taking in her disheveled state, but it was the red marks on her chin, the evidence of Arthur's grip, that made his fury spiral into something darker. Turning back to his half-brother, his voice was dangerously low. "Let her go." Arthur scoffed, though he took a cautious step back. "And what if I don't? Don't forget, she's still my fiancée." Adam let out a quiet laugh, devoid of any warmth. "She was never yours. She never will be." The words struck deep, and Arthur's expression twisted with bitterness. "You always take what belongs to me, don't you?" His voice rose in anger. "First the company, and now her?" Adam stepped forward, his presence dominating the space. "I don't take things that were never yours to begin with." The words were calm, but the warning behind them was clear. Arthur's face contorted in rage, and in a flash he yanked a gun from his waistband, aiming it directly at Lucy. "If you take another step, I swear I'll—" He never got the chance to finish. Lucy moved first. She slammed her head backward, the sharp impact smashing into Arthur's nose. He howled in pain, staggering back as blood dripped onto his expensive suit. That was all Adam needed. In one swift motion, he closed the distance, his hand gripping Arthur's collar and lifting him clean off the ground. Before hurling him against the wall with a brutal force, Arthur groaned, dazed, barely able to move as blood trickled from his lip. Adam didn't spare him another glance. His focus had already shifted to Lucy. She was still standing, her breathing slightly ragged, her hair a little tousled, but her strength was unwavering. Yet something in her gaze had changed. She wasn't just relieved. There was something else, something softer. Without thinking, Adam stepped closer, and before she could say a word, he pulled her into his arms. Lucy's breath caught in her throat as warmth surrounded her. For a moment, the world seemed to still. The weight of the past few hours, the fear, the fight, it all melted away in the strength of his embrace. His voice was deep, steady, and filled with an unshakable certainty. "Don't think for a second that I'll let you go again." She stood frozen, but inside her heart pounded faster than ever before. For the first time in her life, she felt truly protected. And perhaps more terrifying than anything else, she realized she no longer wanted to run. Chapter 7. A Sweet Ending. 1 week after all misunderstandings had been cleared, Adam led Lucy to the garden behind his estate, where soft golden lights illuminated the lush greenery. The air was unusually still, carrying with it a quiet warmth that wrapped around them like an embrace. Lucy walked beside Adam at a leisurely pace, hands tucked into her pockets as she gazed up at the starry sky. "Why did you bring me out here? Is something urgent again?" she teased, her lips curling into a playful smirk. Adam remained silent, stopping in the very center of the garden, where the glow of the lights shimmered perfectly against the night. Then, without a word, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and, to Lucy's utter shock, dropped to one knee. She froze. He's proposing? Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at him, wide-eyed. But instead of immediately uttering the typical words of a proposal, Adam simply looked at her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. And then, in a voice laced with quiet certainty, he asked, "Do you remember the night you ran away?" Lucy blinked, momentarily thrown off. "Why are you bringing that up now?" Adam let out a small chuckle, but there was something deeper in his gaze, something that made her chest tighten. "Because I saw you that night." Her heart skipped a beat. "You saw me?" He nodded, his voice turning softer, almost as if he were pulling her back into that fateful moment. "I was sitting in my car, taking a sip of wine, when suddenly—" He paused, his expression darkening slightly as if recalling something he had never quite let go of. "I saw a figure jump from the hotel window, landing with perfect precision. You were wearing a white dress, but there was no fear in your movements, no desperation. You didn't run like someone being hunted. You moved like a warrior freeing herself." Lucy felt the air leave her lungs. She had thought her escape had been flawless, unnoticed. But all along he had seen her. Adam's gaze remained locked on hers, unwavering. "At that moment I was drawn to you, not because you were Lucy Whitmore, the daughter of James Whitmore, but because of the way you fought for your own destiny." Her mind reeled, but before she could process it, his next words shattered her completely. "After that night, I searched for you." His tone was quiet, yet each syllable carried undeniable weight. "I wanted to know who you were, why you ran, but before I could find you—" His lips curled slightly, amusement flashing in his eyes. "You walked right into my office, disguised as a bodyguard." Lucy's mouth fell open in disbelief. Adam had been looking for her, only for her to unknowingly march straight into his life. Adam let out a slow exhale, shaking his head as if he still couldn't believe it. "I spent days tracking you, and yet you delivered yourself right to me." Lucy groaned inwardly. Of all the possible ways their story could have unfolded, this was by far the most ironic. Then Adam lifted his gaze back to her, his sharp blue eyes now filled with something impossibly gentle. "So, Lucy?" Slowly he flipped open the velvet box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that glistened under the golden lights. "This time, will you stay with me?" Lucy felt her chest tighten. There were no forced arrangements, no business transactions, no selfish deals. This time it was her choice. Looking at him, she let out a small laugh, her voice carrying both teasing playfulness and absolute sincerity. "No pressure, right?" Adam tilted his head, his lips curling into that signature smirk. "No pressure," he agreed. Then after a deliberate pause, he added, "But refusal is not an option." Lucy laughed, shaking her head before finally nodding. "Then I suppose I have no choice but to say yes." Before she could react, Adam slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms. His embrace was firm, his heartbeat steady against her own, as if silently promising that he would never let her go again. At last, after everything, Lucy understood one thing: she no longer wanted to run. A few days later, Lucy returned to the Whitmore estate, not as a runaway heiress forced into an arranged marriage, but as a woman who had taken control of her own fate. Adam stood beside her, his hand firmly gripping hers, making it clear that this was no negotiation. As they stepped into the grand living room, James Whitmore sat there, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Lucy's mother, Eleanor, looked up in shock, her gaze flickering between her daughter and Adam. James placed his glass down and leaned back, eyeing Lucy carefully. "I thought you had run away for good." Lucy smiled, her tone calm but firm. "I ran away from an arranged marriage, but today I'm here to announce the wedding I chose for myself." A thick silence settled over the room. James narrowed his eyes, shifting his attention to Adam as he assessed him like one would a potential investment. So, instead of Arthur Sterling, my son-in-law will be you? Adam didn't flinch under the scrutiny. Instead, he simply adjusted his cufflinks, his expression unreadable. Are you disappointed? James exhaled sharply through his nose. Arthur is a fool. I never particularly liked him, but I can't say I expected you. Lucy crossed her arms, her smirk reflecting the same quiet defiance she had always carried. Well, congratulations, Father. I've just ruined another one of your perfect plans. James remained silent for a moment, studying his daughter intently, searching for hesitation or weakness. But all he found was resolve and happiness. Finally, with a reluctant sigh, he waved a dismissive hand. At least you chose a man who isn't entirely useless. Her mother chuckled before turning to Adam with a warm, knowing smile. Are you sure you can handle her? She's incredibly stubborn, you know. Adam glanced at Lucy, amusement flickering in his gaze. Not only can I handle her, he tightened his grip on her hand, but I can't live without her. Lucy's eyes widened as heat rushed to her cheeks. Adam Sterling, the cold and ruthless CEO, had just openly confessed his feelings in front of her parents. James smirked at Adam before nodding in reluctant approval. Fine, if you're crazy enough to marry my daughter, I won't stop you. But let me make one thing clear. If you ever hurt her, you'll regret it. Adam met his gaze head on. You won't have to worry about that. I would never let anything happen to her. And with that, the wedding was set. The ceremony was nothing short of grand, a lavish, breathtaking event filled with elite guests and dazzling luxury. But for Lucy, the most incredible part wasn't the venue or the crowd. It was the man waiting for her at the end of the aisle. A year later, their life wasn't just filled with happiness, but also with the cries of newborns. Twins, a boy and a girl. Lucy stared at the two infants in her arms before shooting Adam a tired glare. We should have negotiated, you know. One was enough. Adam chuckled, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Too late. This was your plan, remember? She huffed, but a warm smile crept onto her lips as she leaned into him, finally at peace. After years of running, she had found her home. Because home wasn't a place. It was the arms of the man who never let her go. Thank you for following our story. Did this story touch your heart? Leave a comment below. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.